Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard and this is Lap of the World, your home for road trips and racetracks, which shockingly is actually what we're going to be talking about today. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, or if you just enjoy this video, please don't forget to click the subscribe button along with the bell down below, and that way you will get a notification anytime we upload another video like this one, or when we are eventually then able to get back out into the world and check another track off of our list. Now, the idea for today's video has been marinating for a little while, but I kind of always knew it was going to be a challenge from both an editing and ad-lib standpoint, so I'd been procrastinating on it. But as I literally have nothing better to do right now, the NSX is kind of down for maintenance, and all of its parts are either outbound in the mail to be repaired, or I have some stuff inbound in the mail to work on some other projects on the car, but none of that's here yet, so good a time as any. The premise for this is I wanted to see if I could describe in words all of my kind of experiences at a given track in the time it took me to drive a lap of the track. So cross the start-finish line, start talking, get through some favorite memories, overall experiences, and other thoughts before I then cross the finish line again and do that all sort of off the cuff. You know, as a little bit of a improv challenge, if you will. So that's what I have done, and hopefully this will go well. We'll see if this is either a single video or an installment in a series by the time we get to the end here. But I did want to cover there are three notable exceptions. I've done all the tracks in the chronological order that I drove them, and there are three notable exceptions. One is the first track that I ever actually drove on, that was with a helmet on, basically. Pocono International Raceway. I was up there at an event with my family, and my dad tosses me the keys to his 1973 Di Tommaso Pantera and says, "Oh, by the way, I signed you up for this intro to track experience. So here are the keys to this car that takes some attachments to drive quickly, and enjoy your first foray onto track driving, and with some banked turns and tricky hairpins. I'm sure it'll be fine." It was awesome. Was totally fine, but I did not bring back any video from that experience. Also, the second track that I drove, which was at Shenandoah Circuit at Summit Point Motorsports Park, that was my first full driving school weekend with car guys. And I don't even think I owned a GoPro at that point in time, and I was way too busy trying to figure out logistical challenges of getting my car there after it had some issues, and then tiptoe it around the track. I say tiptoe, I actually got moving at a pretty good clip there, but tiptoe around the track in monsoon conditions in a snappy mid-engine car. So I have no video from that. The other one that I've excluded was my trip to the Nürburgring. I don't have any video from when I drove the rent-for-ring Suzuki Swift around there at a decent clip. The only video I have is 10.5 minutes of me trying to hustle a Ford Focus diesel wagon around the track as fast as I could. And I don't think anybody wants to watch that while listening to me try and think of things to talk about. But with those three exclusions in mind, here we go. Without too much further ado, we will get started with my thoughts and experiences from Carolina Motorsports Park. All right, first up, Carolina Motorsports Park. I think along with Road Atlanta, CMP is where I spent most of my time climbing the NASA HPDE ladder. I've been there 9 times, and I've had several firsts at this track. So let's see here. My first HPDE with NASA was at CMP, where I actually had another gentleman in an MR2 instructing me in my MR2, which I thought was a novel thing. I then later got my check ride into time trial at CMP. I then competed in my first time trial event at CMP, where I ended up on the podium. And then I later won my first time trial event at CMP. So I do have probably some sentimental bias towards the track. In general, I think it's an underrated track in the region. I think it's a great place to learn. There aren't very many places you can get yourself into too much trouble. And the rest of the time, there's not a whole lot to hit. So if you can kind of mess up and not feel too bad about it. But again, I've had a lot of experience there over the years. I think I really like the facility. I really like the track. My only regret there is that I didn't get to go back towards the end of my time trial, quote unquote, career, when I had sticky tires and no cats on the NSX to take a crack at what was then the TTB track record. I was within shouting distance until some friends of mine went back and lowered it precipitously after some rules changes. But such is life. As some of you may have anticipated, next on our list we have Road Atlanta, currently the crown jewel of Georgia motorsports at least. This facility has undergone significant changes and upgrades since my last visit there, I think around 2013. Road Atlanta is I don't know who coined the phrase, but somebody famous I think once said that the difference between a good track and a great track is consequences. And Road Atlanta definitely has consequences. There's not very many places here where you can get it wrong at all without potentially hitting something fairly hard. And that's always kind of been in the back of my mind when I've been driving it. I never really felt like I could go the full 10/10ths here. Probably some subconscious self-preservation happening there. But it's a track I've always enjoyed, I guess, but I've never really been in a hurry to go back to for that reason. I always enjoy my time there, and I have a ton of fun. I think I did my instructor certification with NASA Southeast, something I haven't really used all that much for that matter, but I think probably one of my favorite memories there was actually at a Porsche Club event. Where I actually finally found the thermal capacity limit of the NSX, trying to chase down some guy in a 944 Cup car, and rubber banding with him through an entire lap. But now it's always a great track. Definitely one you should probably put on your to-do list. Just be careful when you do. So next up, we have Virginia International Raceway. I love VIR. It would take some very special facilities to bump this one out of my top 5 favorite tracks. Ironically, my experience here did not start all that fortuitously. My first visit was back in 2009 with my old MR2 Turbo. And so on the first day, I had some kind of, we'll call it teething problems with my instructor, but we finally came to an understanding and everything was great there. And then I boiled the brake fluid and went off at the end of turn 1 for a little agricultural excursion. But that was all fine. He actually gave me good marks for what I did in an emergency and helped me bleed the brakes. So then we got out for the next session and I blew the head gasket in the MR2 because it decided to dump all of its coolant and not tell me. But in spite of that less than ideal start for my first visit to the track, I still actually had a pretty good time and knew that I wanted to come back, and I have done so on several occasions. This was actually the first track that my wife and I brought our son to for a NASA time trial event because we thought he would enjoy the sort of the excitement of that atmosphere. And I shockingly managed to pull down a third place podium finish at that time trial event in spite of the I was not expecting that at all given the field that had showed up, but the stars aligned and I managed to pull down a personal best lap, and so that was a really fun experience. That's probably my favorite memory from there is coming back in the pits and then my son, who had been holding a stopwatch, telling me the time, and I wasn't exactly sure I was believing him at that point because I wasn't running data in the car. But VIR is amazing. I think I don't expect to make it back to very many tracks at this point. Given my goal for the channel and what I want to do, but I might make an exception for VIR. I'm going to have to be quick with this one because Talladega Grand Prix Raceway has one of the shortest laps of any of the tracks that I've driven so far. It is a brilliant learning facility that is just over the ridge from the more famous Talladega Motor Speedway. It is brilliant in that it is a small track and also very inexpensive to rent. So what we used to do was a bunch of autocross friends used to get together, some from Knoxville and some from Chattanooga, and we would, 20 or so of us would just rent the track out for a day and, drive down as it's within a few hours of Knoxville and then have a blast. It is a brilliant learning facility. It was originally designed for motorcycle use. So there is really, I think there's one wall in the entire facility and really nothing to hit. You can go off here pretty spectacularly and have to do nothing worse than probably fish an ear of corn out of your radiator grill. But highly recommended as a place to learn because you can do a lot of laps in a short amount of time. So also useful for testing and setup changes as well. So you're now watching what will have been some of the last laps to be turned at Nashville Superspeedway prior to its closure in late 2011. This is mere months away at this point. I'm chasing my friend up there, Corey, in his brown, definitely not stock BMW, having a ton of fun at what was a very entertaining facility to drive at. It was extremely technical for a Roval. You can see these tight infield sections, and then we're going to dip back out into the banking, go through a bus stop, and then kind of a long sweeping left back onto the banking then to complete the lap. Definitely miss having a facility this close to home. This was only a couple hours away. I think even I think with now Atlanta Motorsports Park, I have a track that's at least less than 3 or 4 hours away, but still miss having one this close. But that's the danger. This is why you should get out and patronize your local track, whatever that might be, because if they're not pulling in money, then even in a metro area like Nashville, they can fall by the wayside. Sebring International Raceway is one of those bucket list tracks. When you look at it, just the history alone makes it worth the trip. And it's probably good that the history alone makes it worth the trip because the facility itself is not necessarily anything to write home about. It's nice and there's enough stuff there that you're comfortable, but it's no Daytona International with its NASCAR money and fan zone experiences and stuff like that. No, you go to Sebring because of the history, and then you go to Sebring again because the track is amazing to drive. It was the host track for the 2016 NS Expo, and the track event was administered by Chen Motorsports, who is more or less based at Sebring. Maybe not in a literal sense, but look them up if you do want to drive the track because they run a very tight ship and a great event every time. My first event, though, I guess NS Expo, as fun as it isn't my Sebring highlight if I'm going to pick one. That's because my first event at Sebring was actually a Chump Car race, what was then called Chump Car. I think they've changed the name to Champ Car now, but and I was driving a crap basket of an ex-Honda Challenge Civic with a bunch of friends of mine from Knoxville, including the ex-Honda Challenge champion, Lionel Kent, whose car this used to be. It had then been put in a wall by a different driver and then resurrected by some friends as well as a chump car, as it were, with a Craigslist motor in it and things like that. And that was my first foray into any kind of quote-unquote real wheel-to-wheel racing. And it's maybe still the most fun I've had in a car. The fun trivia there, I kind of, if I'm looking for internet cred, it's that I actually managed to turn the fastest lap in that car of anyone on our team that weekend. But I will, with all respect, point out that the only reason that happened is because the car broke on Lionel's outlap. So the actual racing driver didn't get a full lap in, which would have invariably eclipsed my time by probably some margin. But that was so much fun and something I would highly recommend trying out. I would rank Barber Motorsports Park as the most sophisticated and polished road racing facility in the southeastern United States right now, potentially accepting Road Atlanta post recent upgrades. The track itself is an absolute roller coaster. The grounds around the track are immaculate. They're like the Royal Gardens of southeastern motorsports, I think. And the museum on site is great. I think well worth any admissions fee there. Probably most interesting if you are of two-wheeled persuasion. They have a lot of motorcycles on display, but at the time we visited, they also had some vintage Formula One cars that I was more than happy to geek out over, among a few other things. Barber has a little bit of a sentimental attachment for me as well. The first trip that my wife and I actually went on together was for an event here, along with my best friend and his wife, for a very chilly track day and time trial event with, I think, NASA Mid-South. It was an entertaining event. Like I said, the weather didn't really completely cooperate with us, but everybody had a good time in spite of that. I did decently well at the event, although I didn't podium. My friend, I think, got graduated into HP to E3, and my wife didn't throw up in my friend's helmet that she borrowed to go for a ride with me. So, all's well that ended well. But yeah, I think Barber is definitely a what I would call a destination track. You kind of go here and you can bring the family and everybody will be able to be entertained in some respect or another. I do have to say that Barber Motorsports Park as a facility is probably one of the most beautiful tracks that I've been to. 100% worth the trip if you're looking for some place to kind of tourist to in the southeast. Just maybe plan on visiting in middle of the spring or middle of the fall. Probably avoid July, August, early September because humidity. But that's where we're going to call it for today. We will pick this up next time with High Plains Raceway in Colorado. That should be a fun one to talk about as well. But in the meantime, don't forget to click subscribe down below. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And feel free to share any of your own experiences at these or other facilities in the comments below. You can also help out your resident track addict by buying some of his merch. I've put a link in the description for that in my Teespring store. But in the meantime, I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World, and I will see you guys in the next video, if not at the track.